Recently, I picked up a recycling bin that had been sitting in the almost summer sun for a few hours. And as I brought it inside, I noticed that it smelled exactly like laundry that had been hanging on the line outside. And you might have noticed the same thing. And maybe you've even wondered, as I did, why does a plastic recycling bin smell like fresh laundry when it's been sitting outside in the sun? And why doesn't laundry that you dry inside a house smell like fresh laundry? Well, some scientists at the University of Copenhagen have a partial answer to why all of these things smell just so good, even though some things like a recycling bin shouldn't smell that good. But it does. I'm John Paulus, and you're listening to Life's Potluck Buffet. Join me today for another olfactory adventure after this brief musical soundbite and brief message from me. If you've enjoyed Life's Potluck Buffet, please subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. If you have a Brave browser, you can now contribute basic attention tokens to Life's Potluck Buffet with John Paulus on YouTube. Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening. Now, when I smell fresh laundry that's been dried outside in the sunlight, or I smell a fresh recycling bin that has been sitting in the sun and is empty, I think, the reason these things smell the same or smell the way they do, and if you are familiar with sun-dried laundry, then you know what smell I'm talking about. Because in all of the places I've lived, it smells pretty much the same, even though the places might have different climates or different plants and other features that are around. So, but I always thought it had to do with something in the air that gets on the towels or that gets on your recycling bin, and that's what makes it smell like, well, that fresh laundry smell that has been dried outside, been hung outside to dry. But that's apparently not it. My simple explanation that I told myself was, in fact, the wrong explanation. And I started to get an inkling of that because of the experience of having a fresh laundry smelling recycling bin. And also thinking about the fact that being in different places when laundry dries in the sun, even with different detergents and different, conditions, as long as it dries in the sun, it kind of smells the same, or at least very, very similar, so that I couldn't tell the difference. I couldn't tell you where that laundry dried, much like if you had a bathtub or sink drain or toilet, you couldn't actually tell if you're in the northern or southern hemisphere based on which way the water drains, clockwise or counterclockwise. There's an episode about that, so check that out if you haven't seen it. But the same thing is true. I couldn't tell you where in the world you dried that laundry if you gave it to me to smell, because it would smell the same. And I don't think it's just me. Well, scientists at the University of Copenhagen looked into this, and what they discovered is what helps, I think, me now understand what is actually going on with the smell of laundry and also recycling bins that have been sitting out in the sun. So how did these scientists do it? Well, what they did was they thoroughly washed some towels, and they put one in the sunlight, one in the shade, and one that they dried in dark conditions. And they then put them in bags and ran the air from the bags through a. Okay, this has always been my Waterloo in terms of words or sets of words. A gas spectrometry mask. No, I did it wrong. Gas chromatography mass spectrometry setup which will tell you the compounds that are in the uh, thing that you're running it through. So they were basically testing to see what chemical compounds were given off by the towels that had been dried in those various places. And what they found was that the sun-dried ones produced all of these various aldehydes and ketones were formed. And that is because of the reaction of two things. At least that's what the scientists who did this study think about it. Because there are not a lot of studies that have been done about what happens when things dry in sunlight and air. So this is a kind of pretty original work going on here. And I haven't found many follow-ups to it. I'm sure they're out there, but I haven't seen any of them. And the partially they attribute it to the ozone in the air reacting with various compounds in the towels and creating in those reactions, which involve a thing called oxidation, which is hard to explain easily, but it's easy to understand if you think about when an iron bar reacts with air and water, it gets rusty. So that's a good example of an oxidation reaction going on, and so that formation of rust. And that's one thing. But the other thing is the sunlight. And this seems to be the key element here, because the ones that had been in bright sunlight had a lot more of these things that smell like organic substances, are basically the compounds behind the smells of organic substances. So, for example, aldehydes. And by the way, aldehyde just comes. It's not like from an Arabic word, aldehyde. It's from a made up word that a chemist made up many years ago, centuries ago. That is alcohol dehydrogenatus, which means dehydrogenated alcohol. So that's where aldehyde comes from. And without getting into chemical structures, we'll just take it for granted that that's just its name. Now, aldehydes are the things behind, for example, I don't know, pick a spice, cinnamon. The essential oils that are in cinnamon contain aldehydes that give it its cinnamon smell and also its taste. So that gives you a good example. So the smell of cinnamon, that is a thing called cinnamaldehyde, which is in, cinnamon. So a lot of the things that smell like various things are because of these aldehydes, and that's why there are so many different flavor and smell notes in your sun-drenched recycling bin or the towels that have dried outside in the sun on the line, is that these reactions that are going on with the sunlight and also perhaps with the ozone in the air are creating all of these compounds that produce smells and flavors. And that is really amazing, of course, but also it means that it doesn't have to do with any smell or flavor notes floating in the air or in the recycling bin, fortunately, because believe me, it would not smell like fresh laundry if the smells of the stuff in the recycling bin were to be the key element here. But you get the point. These oxidation reactions are the things that are producing the compounds that we smell. And the same is true with metals, as I said about the rust reaction. The same is true with why silver tarnishes or copper turns green. The Statue of Liberty wasn't always green. Statue of Liberty started out copper colored, and just over time with the air and water that it interacted with, the copper of the statue turned green. And so that is another element of the oxidation thing going on there. And when you touch coins, for example, if you ever touch a coin and you're like, oh, the coin kind of has a smell to it, that's because of reactions between things that are on your skin, in the oils of your skin, and the metal of the coin. And that's producing these same kinds of scent compounds that make you able to smell it. So if you didn't touch a coin, if no one ever touched a coin, it just came out of the mint, and it wouldn't smell like anything in particular until it had some sort of reaction that caused it to oxidize. And when it did oxidize, then it would start to smell like coins usually smell to us for that same reason. Okay, so now let's ask the cards for their reaction, that's a chemistry pun, about today's episode. Yellow lemons, blue dumplings, magenta noodles, cards, tell us some things. It's card 29. Something you thought was beyond you is actually within your capabilities. Well, I proved that today by being able to say gas chromatography mass spectrometry. So I'm already one up on the game here. So once you realize that your wildest dreams are hardly the stuff that other people's dreams are made of, you can start to accept that they are not fantasies, but accurate predictions of your future. So take that first step right now. Identify something you think is totally beyond your reach. What is it? Just off the top of your head. Have you thought of something? Okay, now that you have something, plan the next step in achieving it. So give that a thought, and I'll see you tomorrow on Life's Potluck Buffet.